Ladies and gentlemen, the NFL season for the Buffalo Bills is currently underway. Well, not in the way you're thinking. Preseason is very much within us. Training camp is also happening. Many practices are happening as well. It's a very exciting time to see and to get our first look at many unknowns on this Buffalo Bills roster. And by the way, this Bills roster is the deepest it's been in almost 20 years. So, when I make this video today, previewing and predicting the Bills' 53-man roster, it has been one of the most difficult to predict because there are so many good players that could potentially be cut. With everything all of that out of the way, let's get to our first position group, the quarterbacks. So, I am predicting that the Bills only keep two quarterbacks on the roster, Josh Allen and Mitch Trubisky. They are cutting Jake Fromm, 5th-round pick from 2020, and Davis Webb. And my reasoning behind this wasn't one of the most hotly contested groups that I was thinking about. Allen, of course, is a surefire lock. Mitch Trubisky, they brought him in, and by all indications, he's been fairly steady during training camp. And Davis Webb and Jake Fromm neither of them have really provided Trubisky any true competition for that backup spot. Now, I will say, for Jake Fromm, this may be a little disappointing for him, but consider that this is his real first NFL season. Last year, he was sheltered away from the entire team for the entire season. He never got to experience training camp, practices, the playbook, none of that. So this is really his rookie year. I would consider it his rookie year. It doesn't matter, though. He's going to get cut. Both of these guys are practice squad candidates. But if both of them are practice squad candidates, I expect them only to keep one or the other. For our running backs now, we got Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, Matt Breida, and Tywan Jones. The cuts are Christian Wade, yes, former rugby star Wade, and Antonio Williams. So I'm predicting 4 running backs kept by the Bills. And my reasoning behind this one was Singletary and Moss are likely going to be the 1-2. Singletary provides a little extra oomph, and he has pretty decent receiving ability. Zach Moss is the bruising number 2 runner that the Bills are going to look more towards this season. Matt Breida has just a certain level of speed that none of the other 3 running backs have on the roster. And Tywan Jones is a special teams core player. He's been one of the Bills' best special teams player ever since he came back from Houston. And I was really torn on whether or not the Bills should keep Antonio Williams. That Week 17 performance against Miami was really good from Williams. We got to see a couple nice runs from him. We've seen a couple more from the Bills training camp. But running back is the first of many groups that I just feel that it's really, really tough to figure out that 4th or 5th spot. I could easily see the Bills keeping Antonio Williams on the actual squad, and the Bills going with 5 running backs this year. Yeah, it's definitely a running back by committee, and there's no clear-cut star from this group, but it's a very solid group nonetheless. Next up, we have the wide receiver group. I'm predicting 6 players make it, and the locks are Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Gabe Davis, and Isaiah McKenzie. Now, throughout this entire training camp, all of Bills Mafia has been watching to see who will end up winning that 6th wide receiver spot. And I have Jake Kumerow winning that. He's been pretty good so far in training camp. He's shown a lot of great abilities in his speed, his catching, even his blocking, and he can also play special teams. He's a very versatile player. And when Aaron Rodgers wants to retire because of Kumerow, you better know that Kumerow can be a special player. He got 1 pass last year for 22 yards, and coincidentally, that was also his first career NFL touchdown catch. And it was a pretty good one. He's shown real good things during training camp and practices and preseason so far, and he just has the inside edge right now. Moving on from the wide receiver group, we got the tight ends, and I say that they're going to keep 4. Dawson Knox, Jacob Hollister, Reggie Gilliam, and Tommy Sweeney. If you guys don't remember Tommy Sweeney, he was out for the entirety of last season because of COVID-19 complications, and he just had a lot of medical issues. So it's really nice to see him return back to the squad, back on the team, doing his job once again. Dawson Knox, he's struggled with drops throughout his career, but I say the Bills keep him for at least one more season. Jacob Hollister provides a nice safety blanket in case Knox does fail. Both Hollister and Knox have a similar playing style. They're not elite blockers. They are decent pass catchers, and they got some good speed. Reggie Gilliam, he was a bit of a difficult one to predict because I could see him slotting in as a running back too, where he would be listed as a fullback. He could be a fullback. He can also be a tight end. Last year, the Bills played him at both. This year, I'm going to list him as a tight end. But reminder that he can play both, which is another advantage to having him on the squad. And then Tommy Sweeney has shown some real nice catches during training camp. When he did play in 2019, he showed promising signs that he could be a pretty good backup tight end in the NFL. So keep watch on him. The cuts I have Nate Becker, Bug Howard, and Quinton Morris. Now, for a gargantuan group of players, it's the offensive line, and there were a lot of them going into training camp. The locks I had were Deion Dawkins, Mitch Morse, Daryl Williams, Cody Ford, Ike Bedker. Those were my locks. Now, the final fringe players that I see edging out the others are Spencer Brown, Ryan Bates, Tommy Doyle, and Jamil Douglas. Now, the reason I went with Jamil Douglas at that final offensive line spot is that of the veteran group that the Bills brought in during free agency, I think Douglas has the most upside. He can play any position on the offensive line, and he hasn't committed any unforced errors like we've seen with the other veterans guys like Bobby Hart. He beats out Jack Anderson, 7th round pick Jack Anderson, for that final offensive line spot. And I decided to keep Spencer Brown because while he may be raw, he has shown a lot of good qualities during training camp. Ryan Bates is another depth offensive lineman. This is his second straight year with the Bills. Maybe his third. I may be mistaken there. Tommy Doyle, also like Spencer Brown, is a raw offensive line prospect. And the rest of the guys I thought were just mainstays. Now, going to our defensive line, we got 10 coming back. Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, AJ Epinesa, Greg Rousseau, Starluda Lele, Carlos Boogie Basham, Ed Oliver, Justin Zimmer, F.A. Obata, and Harrison Phillips. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of players. Some notable cuts are Eli Anku, Brendan Bryant, Trayvon Hester, Daryl Johnson, and Mike Love. Now, why I really liked Daryl Johnson as a player and a guy, he's just one of those guys. While I'm sure he'll find a team elsewhere because he's one of the guys that it shows how deep this Bills roster is. Like, he's not the first, and he certainly won't be the last really good player to be cut by this very deep Bills roster. And it's unfortunate because he's got a lot of good attributes, but I just see a lot more upside with F.A. Obata. He's been very impressive during training camp. He's getting in behind the line of scrimmage. He's beating out these offensive line battles, especially against Spencer Brown. And I just think he's been showing a lot more hunger than anybody could have expected from him. Justin Zimmer, waiver wire pickup from last year. I see him making the roster. Everybody remembers him for helping the Bills to beat the Patriots in Week 8 of last season. Just a phenomenal, energetic player that I think would bring a lot to that defensive line group. Harrison Phillips, he's had a bit of an underwhelming camp, but I predict he maintains his spot because he doesn't show up on the score sheet very often, but he's a very calming and reassuring kind of player. And of course, it's a huge help to have Starluda Lele back to help with the run defense, which of course was the Bills' biggest weakness from last season. Moving on, we have the linebacker core, and I predict them keeping 6 with Tremaine Edmonds, Matt Milano, Tyler Matakevich, Tyrell Dodson, AJ Klein, and Joe Giles Harris. The cuts are Tyrell Adams, Micah Bell, and Andre Smith. Now, there isn't really too much to talk about with this group. The only controversy I could see happening is picking Joe Giles Harris over Andre Smith, and I will tell you right now. Andre Smith, he may be a really good special teams player, But with Joe Giles Harris, I think the Bills have just a pure wild card. This kid is athletic. He's got speed. He's very energetic off the line. He's a good coverage specialist. And why not try to get him to play special teams? To me, Harris has a lot more upside than Andre Smith. And that's why I picked Giles over Smith here. Moving on, we have our secondary group. There are a lot of guys this year and a lot of question marks at this position. The only real lock here was Tre'Davious White, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Taron Johnson, and Levi Wallace. The rest, total wild cards. Of those wild cards, I picked Dane Jackson, Siran Neal, Jaquan Johnson, and Damar Hamlin. With Dane Jackson, the 7th round pick from 2020, he looked very good when he was playing against DeAndre Hopkins in that loss to the Cardinals last season. Siran Neal, another special teams core player. He's been phenomenal since the Bills drafted him back in 2017. Damar Hamlin, he's got a bit of an upside at the safety position. He could provide a little extra cover in case, like, God forbids, Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer gets injured. And with Jaquan Johnson, another special teams player that is really good for the Bills. And the only real guy I could see that may flip this around is Rashad Wildgoose, the draft pick from the Bills this year. He's been okay at training camp. Not a ton of big plays from him. He's been burned a couple times. And because of that, he needs a great camp and a great preseason to make the Bills roster. And until he does that, I just don't see him making the Bills roster. And finally, and probably the easiest group to predict, it was the special teams group. I predicted Tyler Bass, Reed Ferguson, and Matt Hack. They had no competition throughout training camp, so this is really just a slam dunk. There's nothing here to predict. These 3 guys will be making the roster. No matter how much people question the Bills cutting Corey Bojorquez and signing Matt Hack instead, I like Matt Hack. He may not have as big as leg as Corey Bojorquez, but I think he's more of a consistent punter than Bojorquez. And then Tyler Bass, we all hope we can see more growth from him this season after a very strong finish to last season. So there you go. That was my 53-man Bills squad predictions for the 2021 NFL season. Tell me your thoughts in the comments section. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What do you want to see next? I was Don from Buffalo SportsCenter. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Subscribe here on YouTube. Follow us on our Instagram and join the Discord. All of those links are in the description below. Thank you guys so much for watching. And see y'all in the next video.